April 14, 2021, Persian Gulf, 3:47 p.m. local time. A small fishing dhow, 22 feet long, manned by 3 Iranian fishermen, is about to make a catastrophic navigation error. 8 minutes from now, this wooden boat will be surrounded by 2 Navy destroyers, 3 armed helicopters, and will have the weapon systems of a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier locked directly onto its hull. The distance between them? 400 yards, 1 football field closer, and the rules of engagement would authorize deadly force. This is the story of what happens when a civilian vessel, accidentally or not, enters the most dangerous waters on Earth, the security zone of a United States carrier strike group. To understand why this moment became so dangerous, you need to understand what a carrier strike group actually is. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower CVN-69 is not just a ship, it's a floating city, 5,000 sailors, 90 aircraft, a nuclear reactor that will run for 25 years without refueling. But more than that, it's a symbol of American power projection, of military reach, of the capability to launch airstrikes anywhere on the planet within hours. And symbols make targets. October 12, 2000, USS Cole. A small boat packed with explosives approaches the destroyer during a refueling stop in Yemen. 17 American sailors are killed. The blast tears a 40 by 60-foot hole in the ship's hull. The lesson is burned into every naval commander's mind. Small boats are not harmless. They are potential weapons, especially in the Middle East, especially near high-value assets. So the Navy created something called the NCAGS, the Naval Cooperation and Guidance for Shipping System. And at its heart is one simple rule. Cross that line, and you've entered what sailors call the bubble, the defended space. The zone where every weapon system on the ship and its escorts can track you, target you, and if necessary, eliminate you. The problem? Not everyone in the Persian Gulf reads the memos. Let's go back to that afternoon. The Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group is conducting routine operations in international waters, about 40 miles off the Iranian coast. The destroyers USS Mitchell and USS Laboon form a protective ring around the carrier. Helicopters patrol overhead. Radar operators scan the surface of the water for threats. On the bridge of the Eisenhower, the Tactical Action Officer, or TAO, monitors dozens of radar contacts. Commercial shipping, fishing boats, tankers headed to the Strait of Hormuz. This is one of the busiest waterways on Earth. Most vessels give the carrier group a wide berth. They know the rules. They've heard the bridge-to-bridge radio warnings broadcast in English, Arabic, and Farsi. Asterisk all vessels. This is U.S. Navy warship on Channel 16. Remain clear. Do not approach within 500 yards. This is your only warning. Asterisk, but at 3:47 p.m., one radar contact begins behaving differently. A small surface craft, wooden hull, single outboard motor, no AIS transponder, the electronic identifier that modern ships broadcast. No radio response to hails, and it's on a direct intercept course with the carrier. Teo's eyes narrow. He watches the blip on the screen, watches the distance shrink. 1,200 yards, 1,000 yards, 800 yards. He keys his radio. Captain to the bridge. We have a non-compliant surface contact. Within seconds, the ship goes to modified general quarters. Not full battle stations, not yet, but close. Watchstanders take positions. Gunners mates man the .50 caliber machine guns mounted on the sponsons. Fire control technicians activate the ship's close-in weapon system, the CIWS, or CWIS, a 20mm rotary cannon capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute. On the flight deck, an MH-60 Seahawk helicopter, already on standby for anti-submarine patrol, receives new orders. Intercept surface contact. Identify. Establish comms. The helo lifts off, banking hard toward the approaching boat. From the perspective of the 3 fishermen aboard the dhow, the day had been unremarkable. They'd left port before dawn, as they did every morning, cast their nets in familiar waters, hauled in a modest catch, grouper mostly and some squid. The diesel motor chugged. The sun beat down. The radio, old and salt-corroded, stayed off to save the battery. None of them noticed the gray shape on the horizon growing larger. None of them realized they were about to become the focus of the most powerful military force ever assembled. The Seahawk arrives first. Rotor wash kicks up spray as the helicopter drops to 50 feet, hovering directly over the fishing boat. The downwash is so powerful it nearly capsizes the dhow. Nets tangle. Fish slide across the deck. The crew looks up, shielding their eyes against the rotor blast, and for the first time they see it. A Navy gunner in the helicopter side door, leaning out, M240 machine gun aimed directly at them. One of the fishermen waves. A friendly gesture. "We're just fishermen." The gunner does not wave back. Over the helicopter's loudspeaker, a voice booms in Farsi. Asterisk, stop your vessel. Stop your vessel immediately. You are approaching a U.S. Navy warship. Divert your course now. Asterisk, but here's the problem. The dhow's motor is old, temperamental, and in the chaos of the helicopter's arrival, the engine stalls. The boat drifts, and the current is carrying it directly toward the carrier. Back on the Eisenhower, the TAO watches the radar. The contact is still closing. 600 yards, 550 yards. He has seconds to make a decision. The rules of engagement are clear. If a vessel enters within 500 yards and demonstrates hostile intent, or fails to respond to warnings, commanding officers are authorized to use deadly force to defend the ship. But what is hostile intent? A wooden fishing boat with an old man and 2 young men aboard? Or a USS Cole scenario? Explosives hidden below deck, waiting for the final approach? The TAO doesn't know, can't know. And so he does what commanders in the Gulf have done 100 times before. He orders a warning shot. From the deck of the Eisenhower, a .50 caliber machine gun fires a 3-second burst into the water, 200 yards ahead of the dhow's bow. Geysers of white water erupt. The message is unmistakable. Aboard the fishing boat, panic. The younger fisherman, barely 19 years old, drops to the deck, hands over his head. The older man, the captain, frantically tries to restart the engine. His hands shake as he yanks the pull cord once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The helicopter circles lower. The gunner's finger rests on the trigger. On the bridge of the USS Mitcher, one of the destroyers in the escort screen, the commanding officer watches through binoculars. He's already ordered his ship to flank speed, racing to position itself between the carrier and the dhow. If this is an attack, the destroyer will take the hit. That's the job. The distance continues to shrink. 520 yards, 510 yards, 505 yards. In the Eisenhower's Combat Information Center, the CIC, the dark, blue-lit room deep in the ship where all tactical decisions are made. A young ensign, fresh out of the Naval Academy, watches the radar screen. This is his first deployment, his first real-world crisis. He's been trained for this, drilled for this, simulated this scenario 100 times in classroom exercises. But in the simulations, the contacts were always clearly hostile or clearly benign. This is the fog of war. Pause. The strike group commander, a 2-star admiral aboard the Eisenhower, makes the call, launch the ribs, board if necessary. 2 rigid hull inflatable boats, ribs, drop from the davits on the Mitcher. Navy SEALs and visit, board, search, and seizure teams, VBSS teams, armed with M4 rifles, wearing body armor, speed toward the dhow at 40 knots. The fishermen see them coming, engines screaming, weapons raised. The old captain finally gets the motor to turn over, but it's too late to run, too late to explain. He cuts the engine, raises his hands, and waits. The RHIB pulls alongside the dhow. For sailors, weapons trained, board the boat. What happens next is a carefully choreographed ballet of aggression and restraint. One sailor secures the fishermen, hands on heads, Zip tie restraints applied loosely enough not to injure, but firmly enough to control. Another searches the boat, lifts nets, checks the engine compartment, looks for anything that doesn't belong: wires, detonators, fertilizer, propane tanks. He finds fish, rotting bait, a diesel engine held together with wire and hope, a jug of drinking water, a faded photograph tucked into a plastic bag of a young girl, someone's daughter. No explosives, no weapons, no threat. The team leader radios back to the Mitcher. Vessel is clean, crew non-hostile. Recommend release. On the bridge of the Eisenhower, the captain exhales. He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. Secure from modified GQ. Stand down weapons. The tension drains from the bridge. Sailors step back from their stations. The CIWS powers down. The helicopter returns to the deck. The fishermen, confused and terrified, are given water and released. The VBSS team even helps restart their engine. A small gesture, perhaps, but one that matters. The Dow motors away, slower now, as if aware of how close it came to something it didn't understand. Total time elapsed 8 minutes. In those 8 minutes, a routine day in the Persian Gulf became a reminder of just how thin the line is between diplomacy and war, between misunderstanding and tragedy. The fishermen never learned how close they came to being fired upon. The sailors aboard the Eisenhower never forgot. So what did we just witness? On the surface, this seems like a minor incident, a navigational error, a language barrier, a boat that drifted too close. But peel back the layers and you see something more complex. First, understand the pressure these sailors operate under. The Persian Gulf is not neutral water. It's a chessboard. Iranian fast attack boats, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, routinely conduct aggressive maneuvers near U.S. ships. In 2016 alone, there were 36 unsafe or unprofessional interactions between U.S. and Iranian vessels. The message from Tehran is clear. Asterisk, you are not welcome here. Asterisk, and so every small boat becomes a potential threat. Every radar contact a question mark. Every moment of hesitation a potential disaster. Second, consider the stakes. A Nimitz-class carrier represents over $13 billion in taxpayer investment. 5,000 sailors depend on their commanders to keep them safe. The air power aboard a single carrier is greater than that of many nations' entire air forces. Lose a carrier, and the geopolitical consequences ripple across the globe. So yes, the Navy is aggressive in defending these ships, because they have to be. But third, and this is important, consider the restraint. The rules of engagement legally permitted the use of deadly force once that Dow crossed 500 yards. Warning shots had been fired. Radio calls had been ignored. And yet, no one died. The sailors aboard the Eisenhower and her escorts made the harder choice. To wait, to intercept, to board and verify before resorting to violence. That's not aggression. That's professionalism. Since the USS Cole attack, the Navy has investigated dozens of similar incidents. Most are resolved peacefully, like this one, but not all. In 2008, an Egyptian fishing boat ignored warnings and approached the USS Port Royal in the Suez Canal. After repeated hails and warning shots, the ship's crew opened fire. One Egyptian fisherman was killed. The investigation concluded the shooting was justified under international maritime law. But justified doesn't mean easy. The sailor who pulled the trigger carried that moment for the rest of his life. That's the reality of standing watch in a combat zone. You don't get the luxury of hindsight. You make calls with incomplete information, under time pressure, with lives on the line. And you live with those calls forever. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. When you see images of aircraft carriers on the news, steaming across the ocean, launching fighter jets, projecting power, remember that beneath the spectacle, there are 19-year-old kids standing watch, scanning radar, tracking contacts, making decisions that could start wars or save lives. The Persian Gulf is just 35 miles wide at its narrowest point. It's one of the most congested waterways on Earth. Tankers, fishing boats, naval vessels from a dozen nations, all crammed into a space where mistakes have consequences. And the US Navy operates there every single day, walking the tightrope between deterrence and diplomacy. That fishing dhow, the one that drifted too close, it's still out there, probably. Still casting nets in the same waters. The crew likely tells the story over tea, laughing now, about the day the Americans almost shot them. But aboard the Eisenhower, that incident is logged, analyzed, debriefed. Lessons are extracted. Procedures are updated. Because next time, it might not be fishermen. Next time, the motor might not stall by accident. Next time, the call might be different. And that's why carrier strike groups exist. Not to start wars, but to prevent them. Not to demonstrate aggression, but to project certainty. The message is simple: cross this line, and there will be consequences. But the execution, the split-second decisions, the restraint, the humanity in the middle of a military operation, that's infinitely more complicated. The Persian Gulf is quiet tonight. The Eisenhower is somewhere out there in international waters under a sky full of stars. And somewhere on a different sea, another fishing boat drifts too close to another warship. And the watch begins again.